Hello, and welcome to Book of the Mouse Club, episode 36, Tuesday, March 17th, 2020.
Morning, monsieur.
Where are you off to?
The bookshop. I just finished the most wonderful story about a beanstalk and an ogre and...
That's nice. Marie! The baguettes! Hurry up!
I'm sorry, but how can one possibly pay attention to a book with no pictures in it?
My dear child, there are a great many good books in this world without pictures.
I almost bounced clear out of the book. Some bouncing, huh?
Come home or make myself known.
J. Thaddeus Turtle, Esquire. Have you never met him? You will find his story in this delightful little book, The Wind and the Willows.
I've come to return the book I borrowed.
Finished already?
Oh, I couldn't put it down. Have you got anything new?
Welcome back. I'm your host, Courtney, and I am joined, as always, by my co-host, Emily.
Hey, Courtney, it's great to be back, and I think today's interview is going to be Pixie Perfect.
Yes, so within the Disney community, she's celebrated as the reference model and Marc Davis's source of inspiration for the iconic Tinkerbell in Disney's animated feature film Peter Pan. But that's just one highlight of a career that spans over 75 years in show business. As a toddler, she entered the silver screen in A Midsummer Night's Dream. She graced the small screen in one of ABC's first family sitcoms and pioneered voiceover work for animation, all while dancing through life in between. We are so pleased that she's decided to capture all of these memories and more in her autobiography, Tinkerbell Talks, Tales of a Pixie-Dusted Life. Welcome to the show, Margaret Kerry.
Oh, but wait a second, Courtney. Isn't she now Margaret Kerry Bokey?
Yes, I am. And thank you. What a lovely, lovely introduction. Really, truly.
You're very
beautiful.
welcome.
I sit back and say, I'm sort of amazing.
You are.
But you are.
But yes, it's even more amazing. I am Margaret Kerry Bokey now, and I've been that for 1 month.
Congratulations
Just
on your
1 month. Thank you.
If anybody missed it, Bob Iger himself did tweet about your recent nuptials.
Wasn't that sweet? Wasn't that dear? The Disney people, they can talk, people can talk, and all the rest, but I don't know one who isn't just a dear. They are, I enjoy them, they enjoy me. When I get to see them, of course, I won't see them that much anymore at the studio because I flew off a month ago today and landed in Sarasota, Florida.
Oh, well, welcome to the East Coast.
Yes, and my darling new husband, while I was fulfilling appearances in shows that I had already said I would do, he got busy and bought us a new house. So I am sitting in Sarasota, Florida in a brand new house.
New house, new husband. How exciting. Congratulations.
Yes. And new adventure. Because Tinkerbell, I think that's what Marc Davis saw in me. I'm one of those people, after 90 years in Los Angeles, loving it. I adored that place. People would say, "You're moving to Florida?" And I said, "Yes, I've seen all of Los Angeles. I can see. I want to have a new adventure." And I think that that's what Tinkerbell does. Adventure, hope.
Indeed. And we want to talk so much about your book. And we're going to jump off right away asking you what it's like to be a writer. You spent most of your life in show business, dancing, acting, singing. But what was it like to take on this role as a writer?
Well, it was daunting. I had 3 tries at it. And I didn't get very far into it. I said, no, that's not the way. And then I had this idea that I have read memoirs of people, particularly people in show business, which I adore to read, but it's always the 3rd chapter said, "Do you remember back in the 1st chapter where we met my mother," or whatever it is. And usually no. because there's been a time between picking up the first chapter and the third chapter. So one of my favorite things to do is get Reader's Digest. I just love going through that and all the jokes and the fun and the medical information. And they're all maybe, 8 pages long? So I decided that what I was going to do was take each one of the stories that I wrote about. There are 80 of them in the book, and they are complete. So I wanted the people to be able to pick it up and read a story. The longest one is 8 pages long, and the shortest one is 1 page long, with 160 pictures. And so they can bounce around any place in the book that they want to and say, that was fun. And I have to tell you, 96% of them, and maybe you found that, are fun. There are things that have happened to me, usually with a little punchline.
It really was easy to read, and I know Emily and I both appreciated just the brevity of it. Like you said, you can, maybe pick it up for an hour, but then it's easy, not that it's easy to put down, but, if you have to go do something else, I was ready to come right back and get to the next story, but it was easy to find a stopping place for it. So I definitely appreciated the way that it was written, and I looked forward to each little story.
Well,
Any story...
It certainly made it easier for me because each one was a little story.
And each story was so well connected that even though, like you said, you strove to have each chapter be complete with a beginning, middle, and an end, there was still this connectedness through each story. You even directed readers like, remember this person back from chapter 42? And really brought the whole story together, even though they were small vignettes on their own.
And then I separated it into 6 parts. Part 4 is heavy on things that happen with Disney. Part 1 is being born and causing the Depression. I caused the Great Depression, 1929, and then being adopted, and then these 2 people who were old enough to be my grandparents putting me to work, and I had a ball. It was a very lonely ball, but here I was in the big sound stages, and I was in our gang comedies and doing all, and then extras in this and a speaking part in that. It was very exciting. It was in so many ways.
Disney is certainly, of course, what drew us to the topic and your book, because that's what our podcast focuses on. But I enjoyed hearing about your time on television and your career, after the fact just as much. But what's unique about your book is that you are the first autobiography that we've had on this show. So we've talked to people about their research about Disney, or our friend Jim Corcus has had a lot of that, but your research is all firsthand. So you have all these memories. What helped you kind of recall those, get them organized for the book? Did you have to dig through old photos to find them for that? I loved the photos, by the way.
Thank you. Well, I was terrified that I didn't have enough photos, and that baby picture, I don't know how we kept it. The one that it was at a place called the May Company, and I was taken to this great big department store, and I was 4 years old, and my mother had done my hair, and and I had no idea what was going on. I had just gone. They didn't think that I remembered that I was adopted, but I remembered everything about it. I have that kind of a memory, and here I am in this huge place. And they put me up on this chair, and here's something called a camera. I wasn't sure what that was. And he talked to me, and I could do this, and I could get the feeling. And I became someone else in front of the camera. And I remember that was just a blast. So when I started the book, I thought, oh, if I only had those pictures. But I think my dear first husband, I think he threw them away. Not on purpose. It was, it was just one of those things. And lo and behold, I went through it, and I thought, oh, wasn't I cute? Oh, this would be great to open with. And that's how it started. It unfolded with pictures. And evidently I had kept a lot, and my mother had kept a lot, and it just went with me wherever I was. And then people would help me find. I remember the picture, the two pictures that I used in part 4, which is all about Disney, that because the story was how I met Walt Disney. And I remember I'm standing in the middle of the big sound stage, and all the lights were on. It was a full crew, a full 35 millimeter crew with about, I would say, 30 lights up in the catwalk every place. And I'm in the center, and there's a big cyc behind me, and all this. And we could leave. Excuse me. We could leave the door open because, of course, I wasn't matching any voiceover. And I look over there, and here is this group of people with Buddy Ebsen leading the way. And you couldn't miss him, and I'm a dancer, so I knew that. And then the group came, and then a little bit later, Walt Disney walked over and chatted with us. And he did that 4 or 5 times, 3 or 4 times, I don't remember. But my main thing was I didn't know why he was there. But I remember the risers, these little riser steps, and on the wall of the sound stage were these white pieces of paper, which to me meant registration for animation and a human being. And that's where Buddy Ebsen stood. Well, I said to my friend a couple of times, I said, I don't know what it was. And so Howard Green of Disney said, I know what it was. I'll get you a copy. And he got me two copies, or 2 pictures of it, and it was the beginning of, oh dear, what's it called? Oh, you'll have to look at the book. Animation, registering animation and human beings for animatronics. And so he gave me the photos that I could write around, and that happened quite often. It was, or sometimes my kids would come up with a picture. So, and then at the very end, I don't know why, but I had saved on the back pages, I had saved the letter that came from the archives that said from Dave Smith and answering my daughter's request to say, people say that Marilyn Monroe was Tinkerbell. And he wrote back this lovely letter on stationery, and I saved it. And so it's in the back pages. You can see what Disney claimed. It was that kind of amalgamation. And then I had Linda Swisher, who helps me with my website, Tinkerbell Talks, which is the same name of the book. And Linda went through it with a fine-tooth comb. I accused her of not using enough commas. She must have put a comma in the correct way because she's a school teacher besides. And all that was so wonderful. And then the man who helped me put the pictures in and so on, Michael Aronson up in Redwood City, he changed the pictures and cleaned them up. And it was just, so it was everybody working together. And I think one of the things was because we were working on each small story at the time, it was fun. You knew it would complete. That story would be complete. And then I could start on the next one. And whether that was 2 pages or 5 pages or 8 pages, you knew it was going to be short. You knew it was going to be pithy. And you knew it was going to be fun. And so they all stuck with me. And Mike Rounds, who was my book shepherd, he put it all together. And that was wonderful. It's 80 stories is a lot of stories. Is there any particular part that you like better than others?
I, of course, was drawn to the Disney side, but I actually really enjoyed hearing about your time, being a pioneer on the early side of television and being part of the Ruggles sitcom. What about you, Emily?
I was going to agree, the Ruggles. I'm a high school history teacher, and we spend a lot of time in our unit around the 1950s, about the evolution of television and how that changed American culture. And we actually spend a couple days watching sitcom films in our classes.
That was
we haven't
amazing.
shown the
That
Ruggles.
was
I might
amazing.
have to switch some of ours up. We usually show I Love Lucy a lot, to talk about gender roles as well as pop culture in the 50s. So I really enjoyed the Ruggles section as well because I teach that. So it was really awesome to hear a firsthand account of what it was like to be on one of those shows.
I talked to, before I left Southern California, I talked to Jimmy Hawkins. One of the things he did, he produced this show about the motorcycle man who jumped 17
Evel
buses.
Knievel.
Yes. And he was also the little boy in It's a Wonderful Life. And he was my brother on the Ruggles show. And I had forgotten, you did this. I was doing other things at the same time. Everybody was, because you didn't know whether at way back then, the late 50s into the 60s, whether TV was going to take over and destroy movies or vice versa. So you did everything that you could. So he told me, he said, we were the only show that played, we did not drop out in the summertime. We played 172 episodes of the Ruggles show every single week, and we did it twice. We did it for the East Coast, and then came back after dinner and did it for the West Coast. And and we never heard of a cue card. We got to the place because it was very, very different at the time. The director was never close to you. He was up in some room looking at a monitor, And we got to the place where we said, if we got through the whole show without fluffing a line, we were magnificent. We didn't know whether whether we were acting good or had no idea. And of course, one little other thing about Charlie Ruggles, he had to find this word that told him what his line was. So we timed the show, or I should say they timed the show about 2 minutes shorter than it would have been, because he would go, Margaret, kids, it's very, very difficult, very difficult. And then he'd take off with his line. He found the word difficult, we'll say. And one time he did it perfectly. He didn't have to search for the line. You have never seen such a slow crawl on the credits at the end of the television show. they had to do something, but it was wonderful. It was I loved television much better than I did movies. You can't call doing the work at Disney the movies, because it was so exciting and so different and so amazing to sit there and watch Marc Davis dash off a little sketch of Tinkerbell, what he wanted or how he wanted her face to look or whatever. I tell you, it was just amazing. It was amazing. And I hope that came through in my book. Some people say it did, so that makes me feel better.
For us, it certainly did, and we definitely want to ask you more about Marc. But one more question about your book before we dive more into the content. Autobiographies are also unique because you're using your own voice and not someone else's to tell a story. And you carve out a piece in the beginning of your book talking about how you used your theater background in your writing style. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Oh, yes. I put ... in my sentences, and sometimes they run on, and I pleaded with the people that the dots were the pauses that you have in the script for emphasis. And if you double back, you really can't do it, or at least I felt that you couldn't do that in writing if you just use a comma or a dash. So I was sure that there were. Now, tell me, I'm 90 years old, so I need your help. What are they called if you use a ... that
Ellipses.
says you left something out there? Yes, ellipses. I beg them, please, don't get upset with me. It is not an ellipses. It is for the cadence of dialogue in a script. And I think it worked.
It did. I'm an English major, so I found your note a little funny. Like, please don't hate me. So you are forgiven, and I liked that your voice definitely shined through, as Emily said.
Oh,
you know, it's a pleasure that we get to
so
actually hear your voice here, but I feel like I could pick up on tone and different emphasis reading it as well.
Oh, I'm so glad. I'm so glad to hear that. The new book that I'm starting, I'm going to do it the same way, exactly the same way. Because it's about me and getting married and so on and so forth. That this fairy tale marriage that I have, but I'm going to do the same thing. Say this is not an ellipsis. This is a script. This is a dialogue, and I think we'll have just the same fun.
Yes, I'm so excited to hear that you're writing another one. So maybe we'll have you back to talk about that one too. That would be a lot of fun.
Wow, I hope to have it done by June, but
awesome.
We'll see.
Well, now that everybody is stuck inside, I feel like everybody should be getting, all their projects done.
Oh, yes, absolutely. I get a lot of calls from people, and I just did a talk the other day over the phone to a group. I can't remember which group it was. And I ended up by saying, there is a phrase that Tinkerbell uses, and it saved people's lives. And you may remember the chapter in the book of the lady who had her leg tattooed with Tinkerbell so that she wouldn't let depression take over. And it's think happy thoughts. Because it will help you, it will help people all around you. It doesn't mean that you don't understand that there are problems. But Tinkerbell thinks happy thoughts. It's going to turn out okay. And I've, all my life, and talking to the people who come to the shows and appearances, often that's what I will say. I will say, faith, trust, and pixie dust, and you think happy thoughts now. You hear? And they'll go away smiling. And it's so when you say that, it brought me back to the things that we're going through right now, which are certainly very disturbing.
Well, I am smiling just talking to you and hearing you say that. So I think this episode couldn't be better timed for our listeners. So let's talk about some of those happy thoughts. You mentioned Marc Davis, and you even dedicate the book to him. What was your relationship with Marc like? And Alice as well, since you dedicate some time in the book to his wife too.
Well, he was just, that I found him in his office, and I came up with for the interview, and his office was crowded with two animation tables, and up on the wall was Tinkerbell, the first designs that he did. I shouldn't say the first, but near the end of the designs where little changes were made. And so I'm walking in with a little record player, 45 record player, because the night before they wanted a pantomimist. So I did a little pantomime of a 9-year-old boy fixing breakfast and dropping eggs on the floor. And so if I'm not going to say anything and they can't hand me a script, and he sat down and he was just charming, and he sat me down opposite him, and he said, "What's that?" And I told him, and he says, "Really?" And he said, I said, "Yes, if we could play it, I'll show you." So he called the Uber director down, Jerry Geronimi, and they sat and they said, "Well, let's see this. Let's see this." And of course, it's carpeted. The office is, and they have their eye on me. And Marc Davis could twinkle his eyes better than almost anybody you ever met. There was a twinkle that would come in when he had a new idea. It was marvelous. Anyway, they couldn't get it to work. Oh, I know the first part, they couldn't find the plug. So they're both down on their hands and knees trying to find a plug along the floor, and they found it. And I was thinking to myself, you'd never find this at Columbia Studio. You'd never find it at Fox. You'd certainly never find it at Warner Brothers. Because Warner Brothers' idea is, if you behave yourself, we will let you come in and work here. But otherwise, get out. And here I am with these two, and then they had to make it work, because I'm hopeless and helpless when I have to push a button to make something work. So they sat back and watched this whole thing and appraising me nicely. You know, it was not, well, show us that. They wanted this to be right. They wanted it to work. That's very much like Disney, I found out through the years. So when I finished that, they said, you remember the scene in the nursery when Mr. and Mrs. Darling are leaving for the party, and Tinkerbell is going to land on the mirror on the dresser table. And I said, yes. And he said, can you do that for us? And she preens herself. And I thought to myself, I'm 19 years old. I can do anything. So I said, of course. And so we cleared a little bit of a way. And when I saw her up on the air, I knew a little bit about Tinkerbell, not a great deal, but some. I thought, she's about 9 years old. She's just coming into understanding a little bit more of the world. And I didn't even know about Neverland at that time. That had not. So I thought to myself, play her to be 9 years old. So I stepped on a pretend mirror, looked down and looked back up, which they told me later they liked very much because there was no mirror there. And then I preened myself as a little 9-year-old who was seeing herself for the first time. Because I thought, why would Neverland have a mirror? And I finished, and then I was supposed to get upset because of the size of my hips, which I did, and I marched out, and I went through the front door out to the hallway, just a couple of steps. And they came back, and they asked me other questions, and so on and so forth. And how sweet it was. I mean, you could also tell, and I had been on some audition, I've been in the movies. Come on. And here I'm being interviewed by a fellow who could make some kind of a wisecrack over at some of the studios. And he was such a gentleman. And Jerry Geronimo was such a giggler. And so they said, thank you very much. And I think it was 2 days later when Marc Davis called me and said, would it be convenient for you to come to work next Tuesday? And it was such a gentleman. And I think I put this in the book because I was so impressed. I'm standing in the middle of a big sound stage in a one-piece bathing suit with all the lights upon me, with a crew. Crews are pretty rough and rugged then. And I never felt as if I was in trouble or was being eyed, like a thing. And several years later, I asked Kathy Beaumont about this. I said, did you always feel protected? She said, oh, yes. Oh, I always felt protected. I never worried about it for a moment. She said she never got over her English accent, But anyway, and that's the way we felt. And when you have someone like that who is directing you, and one day he wanted me to give this sort of screwed up face because I was unhappy, and I said, well, how upset is she? And he's sitting at his table with on the sound stage, and he takes a piece of paper and he sketched her face in about, I would say, 30 seconds. and turned it around and showed me that's just the way I would like it. I thought, I'm working for a genius.
Wow, to see him actually draw in front of you.
It was Jerry Geronimi never drew in front of me. He danced. He went back and forth, how they wanted this, and then he would move over. He was an actor before he got into the production part of it, and he starred in a short. What do you remember the name of the man who did those? Oh dear, I'm going to get into trouble again. It was a cartoon with a bird. Anyway, a very famous man. And Jerry Geronimi played the lead. And then he went over to production. So he moved like a dancer. And he was always up. What do you think? What do you think? What do you think? If we could do this, so. And then he'd move over. And then very patient Marc would say, well, that would be fine, but I'm thinking of the next scene to match. And then they get into a talk about it. It was delightful.
That sounds like such a fun studio. And like you said, it's so... I got from your writing how working at Disney was very different, like you just said, from working at other studios. But this role is also really different. So how is acting... Your previous background was movies and television shows. How was any of that different than being an animation reference model?
No, I don't think so, because I'm a dancer and I'm an actress, and that's what you put together. And they liked the character that I came up with, and she's feisty, and she's I call her beguiling. You love her if she's very bad, and you love her if she's very good. And that's what beguiling means. And they seem to really like that. And I'm perky. I've always been perky. I can't get rid of it. And they like that. So it was you throw yourself into each project. The only project that I could never throw myself into was with Al Burton, who went on to produce Charles in Charge and with Norman Lear and all that sort of thing. He decided that I was a singer on Channel 13 when I did my own show with him called Teleteen Reporter. I can't sing. I could, talk it through. And that made that, I think that was the hardest thing that I ever had to do for a public is to sing. But he loved it. As a matter of fact, I did it almost every show, every week. He would give me a song to talk through. This man came and he had a new song that he had written over at Channel 13. He came to see me, and I said yes. And he said, "I want you to record the song for me, the one that I'm what would you call it? That he took around to the different producers to see whether they wanted to really produce the number on a record." I looked at him. I begged him not to use me. I begged him. And he says, "No, I watch you on television, and that's exactly what I want." I went, okay. I did it for nothing.
Oh. Well, fortunately, Tink didn't have to sing, and she doesn't even talk, but she has so much personality. And we had a question submitted from one of our listeners, Susan. Peter Pan is one of her favorite films, and she wanted to know what your favorite quality of Tinkerbell is.
A favorite quality?
Yeah, like within her personality, yes.
Okay. My favorite quality of Tinkerbell is she thinks happy thoughts and ready for the next adventure. And that to me is how she deals with everything that comes along is something else. But she's always looking forward. Always say, "Oh, I can hardly wait." And to me, that's very important in life.
One of my favorite things of Tinkerbell also is how loyal she is to her friends. that even though she and Peter had that moment where they were not getting along and she was not happy with him, she still rushed to his rescue and tried everything she could to finally break free of Captain Hook. And I love that no matter what, she's true to her friends.
That's right. Absolutely.
I like that she's a little sassy, too.
Well, she's about 9 years old, 10
Yeah,
years old.
she has spunk.
You're sassy at that age.
Absolutely.
And after all, she can fly. After all, she's fought Captain Hook at 9 years of age. You know, I'd be a little to the place where I know what I'm doing a little bit, I think.
Of course.
And I mean this in the nicest sense. Our community and the way that we have evolved, people have put love stories on both. On Tinkerbell, they did it in a movie one time, that she's in love with Peter Pan, and they put it on Wendy, that they're in love with each other. One of the things that I have when I go to shows is the unabridged Peter Pan in a beautiful little leather book that's written by James M. Barrie. And if you read it, why, he never thought of any of those things, ever. They were kids. They enjoyed each other or they got upset with each other. But there was no, I hope I'm not shocking people, because every once in a while maybe I'm using the word wrong. But Tinkerbell is Peter Pan's groupie.
In a good way.
About more than anything. She's worried about more than anything else is she doesn't get to go on the assignments. She doesn't go on the adventures. Excuse me. And so that's why she went after Wendy. This big ugly girl might go take her place. And it's that kind of jealousy. And let's face it, a 12-year-old boy does not really look for girls. Girls are, you know, get them out of here. And Wendy is sort of nonplussed. She doesn't know which way to move. But if you read the unabridged, it is just, and when I tell them, when they get the book from me and I say, before they buy it from me, you know, and I've signed it, personalized it, and I say, before, and I can't finish this sentence, but I said, before I give you this book, this was written in 1911, right? And they go, uh-huh. And I said, so I want to warn you that Tinkerbell's opening line in the book is, you silly, And they look at me and they laugh. And I said, yes, but that was a donkey then. It's a word that we don't use the same. And that tells you about the whole book.
I believe Emily has read the book.
And charming.
Yes, yeah. I read Peter Pan years ago. I think I was in middle school or early high school. But Margaret, had you read Peter Pan prior to getting this role of Tinkerbell, or once Marc Davis hired you got the book?
Oh, I did. I got the book, yes. And then when I did the Red-Headed Mermaid, you know, in the movie, you're not quite sure where they're so mean. And one of the things that he says in the book is, and you meet the mermaid, abandons Wendy almost immediately. I mean, he's a 12-year-old kid. And he goes over to the mermaids and, my line in the, you know, we just wanted to drown her.
That's my favorite line. So I watched it. I put Peter Pan on last night because I was in the mood after watching, and I remember in the book you had said you were able to lend your voice to one of the mermaids, and when I realized you were the one who said that they were only trying to drown her, I was like, that's my favorite mermaid because it's such a funny line. So what was that experience like? You know, you got to pantomime Tinkerbell, but you did get to lend your voice as well. Would you mind? I know it's in your book, but sharing it with our listeners too.
And that sent me off on a new career, because June Foray was a dark-haired mermaid, And June Foray was, what is it, Bullwinkle?
Yes, Rocky and Bullwinkle.
Yes, she does Little Nell, just a famous voiceover actress. And we stood out after we had recorded the lines. We stood outside the recording station, and we looked at each other and said, why are we fighting for parts in front of the camera? This is the way to go. I mean, you get to the studio at 1 o'clock. You don't have to fix your hair. You don't have to put makeup on. You don't have to be fixed for a costume. And you don't have to learn any lines. You know, how good can this get?
That's how I feel working from home right now.
So she took off, of course, on radio and all the rest. Started Animation Society International for the Art in Hollywood. I just did a presentation for them for the Annie Awards in February. That was one of the reasons that I couldn't get married earlier than I did, because I had told them that I would do that it was the last Saturday in January. So it was, but that's why I went that way. You know, I thought all these people, all these wonderful people, much better actresses, they could sing. I could outdance almost anybody, but that was passé. Nobody was using that then. And I went into voiceovers.
In your book, you talk about, in your voiceovers, you have, I'm sorry if I have the number wrong, over 40 different voices? How do you learn all of this?
Well, I will do it for you, and I will also do the dialect for you. Okay. Well, Hal Smith, who was on the Andy Griffith Show, I'm going to have to stop and cough. Excuse me.
Absolutely. Take your time.
There we go. Hal Smith, and he was also the drunk on the Andy Griffith Show, the Otis Campbell. Well, he was on the Charlie Ruggles Show. He was the announcer, and he was also one of the most famous voiceover people. So we would get on a microphone, and we were doing all these different voices. We could sometimes do 4 voices per episode, and he'd do the other 4. And we would be standing there. And he would say, I have to do the my German accent, and I've got to get my lower voice. And help me, Margaret, help me. So I said, you come with me. We get darker voices here. And you change everything, and you use a sentence. And he says, I use a sentence? I said, yeah, you use a sentence. And the sentence is, she was looking out the window when I saw her. And so he went back, and he was doing a low-voice German. That's the way you learned it. That's exactly the way you learned it while you're doing the show. So, and I speak 21 different dialects, but none of them are perfect. You use broadcast dialects, because if you used real dialects, no one would understand you. It's too hard. But you use the French, you could just say that, and this is easy to understand, but you know that I am not an American, right? But all I did was an international. That's it.
Do you have
a
favorite?
Just change where your voice goes. Oh, yeah, I do. My favorite is today's. I'm Irish. You know that girl.
Oh, St. Patrick's Day.
Do you? I am. And I'm Scottish at the same time. And I found my family after 50 years. And so I love doing Irish accents. But accents are not in right now. They're really sort of politically incorrect. And so I do them on stage when I go do shows, or at libraries when I talk to families with children, or when I go to schools. And I do so many of those. And I go from one to the other. The one that they seem to love that I do is the highbrow British Duchess. where she says, and yes, what you mean is that the sun or the moon? How should I know? I don't live around here. And that's the one that they seem to like the most.
I like that one too. That one's such a
that's wonderful.
I'm just smiling listening because it's fun. We get to use our imagination as you share it.
Yeah. Well, that's where all of the, I wrote scripts. I did PR work for people, just that they wanted something to sell or whatever it was, and I did a little skits for them, and they're just as friends of mine, and they said, that's good. That's really good. And so I really learned how to use my voice and as you say, the dialogue that I use, and to write that way.
I'm trying to imagine, I'm having fun picturing this you mentioned, I think this is part 5, Cambria Studio, and on certain shows you played multiple characters. So that had to be fun if someone was watching you record, seeing you change your facial expression and your voice and hearing you switch between characters, even though it's just you.
Well, let's see. We had Clarence Thompson, who was recording the first 239 cartoons that I did, and he was the best audience that you can imagine. He would watch it, and I would finish. I was Secret Agent X. That was one of the things that I did, and I would finish the sentence, and I would look up at him, and he'd give me an okay with a big grin. And so he was sort of our audience. We didn't have many people around. We had a very, very good dialogue director, and he just let us go. I mean, it was sort of amazing. And we didn't have much time, so we just kept going. The Three Stooges, they reacted beautifully to get on. Loved My Baby cry. They tried to write that in to, the newborn baby. They thought that was just really the cat's pajamas, but they were wonderful to work with. And you're talking about voices, if I may. I love this story that actually happened. We were recording, and Larry Fine, he's the one with the fluffy hair to either side of his head and a bald streak in the middle, has a speech impediment. And I'm going to overdo it, but he had a speech impediment, which he never really heard. And he had a line that said something, oh, look at that. There is a ship that's coming in that's supposed to save us. And Mo Howard said, Larry, we can't understand a word that you're saying. And he said, oh, I'm so sorry. Okay, I'll try it again. Oh, look, there's a ship coming in that's supposed to save us. Was that better, Mo? He could change over and do a straight voice with no speech impediment as a voiceover. But his own voice, he couldn't. He never.
It sounds like he had to be really conscious of it in order to make the change.
Well, but it was just. I mean, we all just broke up, as you could imagine. And he's saying, "What? He was just a dear."
Getting to have a day at work with the Three Stooges probably doesn't feel like work at all when you're having so much fun.
No. It doesn't. It is just, and the people who are working are so creative. They will come up with something. They come up with a phrase that comes out of nowhere because that's what they do, and that's what I do, and that's what all of these people. And so we're just having a blast. Any place. One time, this is a side. I don't think I put this in the book, but there was a very well-known comedian, and I can't remember his name offhand. I have a thing about it. He's marvelous. He was on the Johnny Carson show forever. He would be on. They give him hats, and he would change his character according to the hat that he would put on his head. And I'm walking down Selma Avenue, just coming out of a little sound stage that I had done some recording. And here he's coming out of a building, and he comes up to me, and I recognized him. Of course, he doesn't recognize me. And he said, "Do you have a minute?" And I said, "Well, yes, I do." And he said, "I want to do something for you." Ladies, he did about a 4-minute comedy skit that was hysterical on the sidewalk, standing there with cars going by. And he said to me, he said, "Is that funny? Is that funny?" And I said, "All about except that one little bit in there." He said, "That's what I thought. Thank you, ma'am," and went walking on.
How fun. You're like,
That's
who
what
just
you could run
gets
into
to have
there.
a fun little moment like that?
Oh, it happens all the time. It really does. You walk up to the producers over at Disney, and they want to chat with you. It's of course, I am saying Disney because I think of some of the other lots that are not as friendly. And Warner Brothers is too big. The lot itself is too big. You can't really get to know anybody.
So with your work at Disney, you just said it's super friendly, but did you ever feel at moments, not necessarily overwhelmed, but like, oh my gosh, I'm making a Disney film? Like, did that ever pop in your head every now and then?
Oh my! Every time that I pulled in, that we had a date they washed my hair and set it up like Tinkerbell, and I had the one-piece bathing suit with a cover-up, and that's all I had to get to walk to the soundstage. But before that, I had to drive on the lot, and here is a man with a big smile, but he's got a clipboard. And I keep waiting and waiting, and he finds my name. I can't tell you. He found my name. I go, wow, this is great. Isn't anybody around seeing this? And then he tells me where to park. And I go over and I get out of the car, and I know where to walk to get my hair done, and with my little bag with me. I want people around to say, "Oh, she's having the best time." And I was. I just was. I still, when I go there, and we with everybody who came to the wedding party, flew in. Robert Bokey is my feller. That flew in his family, his 4 children and grandchildren, and my family flew in. We had 31 people, and Howard Green said he would take us on a tour of Disney Studios. And I'm not into pride very much. I'm always pleased that I could do enough work that somebody wants to hire me. It's not, but I'll tell you, that day, walking around in front of this whole group, and I've met these people. I'd never met them before. They flew in from all over the country, and I'm walking down with the vice president of Disney, and I'm going ahead of them, and people are saying, "Hi, Margaret, how are you doing, Margaret?" Oh, you don't think I wasn't excited? Wow. That was a moment.
Amazing.
And don't you think Tinkerbell would have felt the same way?
Oh, absolutely. Now that you're in Florida, once the Disney parks open back up, do you think you'll find your way over to Walt Disney World to go visit Peter Pan's flight?
Oh, yes. Oh, definitely. I'm going to do a couple of Disneyana shows here first. That's the club.
Awesome.
Yeah, and just one of the ones that I was doing in April, it's over, not a Disneyana club, but it's a festival of the cherry blossoms, and it's over in Marshfield, Missouri. And I just got a call. Of course, it's been canceled, and rightfully so. So we'll do it next year. But I'm traveling. I'm going. I have a date in November. I have 2 dates in November already.
Oh, wow. Very exciting.
One in Mount Airy for the Andy Griffith, where we take Mount Airy, which was his birthplace, and turn it into Mayberry for 6 days. I've been doing that for about 8 years, 10 years. And then the other one is Rapid Rapid something, Michigan. Grand Rapids, Michigan. A big show.
Very fun. I hope those will get there soon enough. But in the meantime, those happy thoughts will will it into existence, like Tinkerbell.
Yeah, happy thoughts. That's it.
I had one more question for you, Margaret, about your time on the Disney lot. You've spent a lot of time on different studio lots, like you said, Warner Brothers, Fox, ABC. And I was curious, what was the buzz about Disney like in different lots?
Oh, it was always Disney. You say, I'm going over an interview at Disney. You would get this look from actors. And so, really? Good luck. If I said to an actor, oh, tomorrow I get to go play Tinkerbell over at Disney, you would see the eyebrows go up and this, oh, would they love to be there? Oh, actually, it was because my agent said she didn't tell me where the call was from before I even interviewed. She told me what it was, a little 3.5-inch sprite who didn't talk. And I said, well, I don't want to get off work here because take the day off. And she said, well, it's at Disney. At Disney, I'll be there at 5 a.m. in the morning.
You don't have to tell you twice. You're ready.
And here's a fun thing about Disney. In those days, we would go over, and often I would meet Jerry Geronimi and Marc Davis walking towards the soundstage, and I would join with them, and we would get on the soundstage and get all ready. I would see the props that they had for me, et cetera, et cetera. And then I think I mentioned that they kept the big door open, the one that you could drive the truck in and out, because we didn't have to match a playback for any lines. And I saw this group of men come in with Buddy Ebsen leading the group. I'm a dancer, so I recognized him, of course. And then they talked about whatever they had to do. And they were planning on something, and then the other men would just go off to wherever it is. And that's when 4 or 5 times, Walt Disney came over to talk to Marc Davis and Jerry Geronimi, see what was going on, and I was invited into the conversation, which was really, really, really nice. And then he would leave. Well, I was asked by somebody, why didn't he have a sound stage of his own? Why did he come to sound stage 1 where you were working? And I looked at the man and I said, at that time, they only had sound stage 1. That was it. And now, of course, you think of all those sound stages that they have and all, but that was it. Just one sound stage. And this man said, I never thought of that.
It was funny, too, to hear you in the book reference the ABC channel as the almost broadcasting company. Now they are a major network and they are Disney, but in your time it was the smaller one.
Yes, the people who worked behind the cameras and so on and so forth knew that they were working for the baby network. It was the newest one. And the other networks is where they wanted to be. That would be the same as working for Columbia Studios or working for 20th Century Fox,
which is also now Disney.
Paramount.
Everything comes back to Disney, it seems.
Yep. I've had the best of everything. It couldn't have been nicer and sweeter and kinder. And Alice Davis was just a dear. She told us about things like still sewing the costumes that she had designed. She was one of the designers, still sewing them on the train going back to the World's Fair for It's a Small World.
I know, that was so fun to hear about.
Yeah. And how what a genius, she was. And to know those people, and Disney was always a little different than any of the other studios around. And it was exciting and creative Oh my, they're actually, I think, the first one who really, really did the campus for the employees. Now, Warner Brothers had a little part of it, and Paramount never thought of it. I mean, they just, yeah, sound stages, that was it. And you went there. RKO the same way. Desilu the same way. Columbia, it was terrible. Everything was run down at Columbia. But they went in to Disney with the plants or the bushes trimmed to look like Mickey Mouse. You know, who does that?
That's Disney for you.
It's all in the details.
Yes, the Disney details. The Disney difference, as they say.
Yep. But it was kind. It was kind.
Well, we're so glad that Disney was such a great chapter in your pixie-dusted life and your pixie-dusted book. So we definitely want our listeners to go and find your book. But what do you hope that our listeners take away from reading your book?
Oh, fun. I want them to be entertained. I'm an entertainer. I dance. I don't sing, but I tell stories. I keep the studio places laughing. And I love history. So I have more history books than you can mention. And I tell the stories of history, like how did Francis Scott Key actually write the Star Spangled Banner? That's one that I'm called on to do. But it's entertainment. Books should, from my standpoint, should be entertaining. And my goodness, when we look at the James Bond book, that's all it was entertaining. So that's what I think. As far away from, of course, I've seen many school books now that are entertaining and give wonder, because we're used to it. We have the TV in our houses, and so, you know, you really can't get by too much with dry books anymore.
So one book you talked about a lot in your book was Mindy Johnson's Tinkerbell and Evolution. And we love to leave our listeners with other resources to jump off of after the book we just read. So tell us about Mindy's book and why you like it so much.
Oh, well, she saved my life when we went over to a press conference. Disney sent us over on the 45th anniversary, I think it was, over to London. She had lived there, and I was so impressed with this woman. I mean, not only she plays the harp, she taught the harp. She went to school in London. She could do research like I have never seen. And this is not true, but I tease her with, you know, Lindy, we're so different, Mindy and I. I can entertain telling a story, and if I have the details a little wrong, big deal. But I could say, I think that I met Marc Davis up at his office on Tuesday morning. I think it was in the morning. It wasn't in the afternoon. Mindy would come up and she would say it was at the morning at 10:30 in the morning and it was raining. She would know that. And I can't do research at all. And her books are just full.
We read her
wonderful research.
We read the Ink and Paint book last March for Women's History Month. It was so good. It was a monster of a book, but we read it front to back.
Incredible.
I loved it. And I believe June Foray did the foreword for that.
Yes. And but she, I just stand back in admiration. And she could do about 42 different things at the same time, do them well, and do research at the same time. I'm not used to people who could do that. I'm used to people who make up things as they go along, writing scripts and storylines and so on. And if I say there were 20 people there and there were 18, she would know there were 18. Not to be mean, she just would know it. And I never met anyone like that before.
Well, we have one last question because we're selfishly curious. Other than Peter Pan, what is your favorite Disney movie?
Oh, that's easy. Mary Poppins.
Oh, such a good one.
And one of the reasons is the that's sorry, easy for you to say. Chimney sweep dance is one of the best I have ever seen in my life. And being a dancer, and I still dance on stage, you know, it's just I was spellbound. Every time I see it, I see something new. And of course, I think Julie Andrews, there's just nobody better. Just nobody better. And talk about your Dick Van Dyke, and it just really, and I find a little bit more of animation that I didn't see the last time, you know, that kind of thing. It's my favorite. My third favorite is Pinocchio. I know it was the start of animation, really, but the work that was put into that, the artistic work at that level and at that time, the wall with the clocks on it in Pinocchio was astounding.
Did you see that one in theaters?
Yes, I did. And then, of course, later on,
I can't imagine.
I saw it again. I will tell you a quick story about that.
Please.
Becky Klein, who is the head of archives, and she just loves archives. She just loves all the things. I've given her some of my things, and she was, she takes me and shows me this, that, and the other. And she, I don't know, several years ago, she heard that somebody on the Disney lot was going to throw away a lot of the stuff while they built a new, I don't know, warehouse where they were going to make furniture or something. I don't know what. And she heard it, and quick like a bunny, she's over there, and she stops that, and she's going to grab all of these clothes and so on. And she herself personally went through the clothes that had been on a hanger for who knows how long. Well, D23, the first one, was coming up, and she was in charge of the display that they had for the archives up on the second floor. And she came and got me, and she said, I got to show you. Now, this is the woman who is head of archives and does the incredible job of 250 million photographs, et cetera, et cetera. So anyway, I said, what have you got? She said, come with me. And there on the wall is about a shadow box. And it's about, I would say, 5 feet tall, all framed like a picture frame, but it's a shadow box. And I would say about 3 feet wide, beautiful gold background. And in it is Pinocchio's costume, the one that the little boy used when he was 4 years old. She found it on a wire hanger. We stood there and cried. We did. Wow. And she had to put it in the shadow box because on a wire hanger all that time, you know, it was a big trouble. So here it is. And I talked to her the last time I visited her before I got married, and we talked about, and we both cried. It's just handling everything that you love and people love. And that was one that got me. It really, really did. The wonderful people at Disney. And you know, and Mr. Smith, Mr. Dave Smith, who every time in his encyclopedia, when he wrote about Tinkerbell, it said, Tinkerbell's model was not Marilyn Monroe, but it was Margaret Kerry, and she was and then he gives a little blurb of what I did for Tinkerbell.
He set the record straight.
You know, yes. I mean, how many places can you go? You would be forgotten. It's really, you got me all head up now.
Oh, well, we're happy to be able to share your story with so many.
Now, what I'm going to do, I did tell you about the book that I'm starting to write now. and it will go. May I tell them that it will be mentioned on Facebook? And I think you just go to Margaret Kerry on Facebook.
Okay.
I don't know how to do it. I just send in postings, and wonderful Linda Swisher posts them for me.
Okay.
And they won't let me get on Facebook because I spent 30 hours trying to answer everybody one time.
Oh.
And that isn't what you're supposed to do. But anyway, so I'm going to put on Facebook when I'm going to put up a rough of, we'll say, part of chapter 1. And it goes over to my website, tinkerbelltalks.com.
Perfect.
And I think we'll have such fun.
Yeah, and we'll be sure to send Linda a link to this show, too.
Yeah. Oh, that would be lovely. Oh, yes. So, anyway, I'm sure I've talked much too long.
We've enjoyed every minute.
Thank you so much. This is incredibly special to us.
And thank you so much. And you think happy thoughts now.
We will.
And you get sprinkled with pixie dust now. And you stay well.
Thank you.
Right?
You too.
You also. Thank you.
Okay, dear. God bless. Bye-bye.
Emily, I cannot stop smiling right now. That interview was so precious.
I feel so much pixie dust in my life. That was awesome. She was so much fun to talk to.
Such a sweetheart. I'm like beaming from ear to ear, and that is what we needed right now.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm glad that she was able to fit us in. She's a newlywed.
I know.
She's
Good
enjoying life. And it's just like she said, what she loves about Tinkerbell is always gung-ho for the next adventure. And that is so her.
Yes. She's keep on keeping on. She's working on a new book, so we'll have to have her back for that. But in the meantime, we have another author interview. One day we'll get back to just the two of us talking about books, but I am really enjoying these interviews in the meantime, so we're happy to talk with people. So next up, we will be joined by author and historian Didier Guez, author of more than 20 books about Disney. His most recent is a series called They Drew as They Pleased, which covers pioneers of animation across decades within the Disney company. And we're reading Volume 5, which is the hidden art of Disney's Renaissance, the 70s and 80s, to prepare. But we'll be sure to talk about his larger volume of work, too. And if you're listening to this episode after its release date, it's likely that you're home practicing some social distancing, as we are too. So thank you for having us along for your social distance party. But some of our friends over on #DizTwitter have decided to start a book club of their own, and we are all in favor of supporting that. And right now, the book club is going to read It's Kind of a Cute Story by Raleigh Crump as told to Jeff Heimbuch. And the book club discussion will take place online on Twitter next Monday, the 23rd. So if you're looking for more details about that, be sure to follow at WED Reads, WED Reads. That's WEDREADS on Twitter for all of the info. They're doing a little giveaway of the book on Kindle. I think they're picking a winner tomorrow, but I'm sure they'll do some other stuff in the future since we're kind of in it for the long haul right now. So stay tuned. That's the first book, probably more to come. So get reading while we are, at home and be productive. You can also keep up with us on social media. We'll be part of that Twitter chat too. So where can you find us?
So you can find us, Book of the Mouse Club, on Twitter and Instagram at Book of the Mouse. And please email us with comments or ideas to bookofthemouseclub@gmail.com. And please keep leaving us those iTunes reviews so that others can find our podcast and read along with us. Courtney, where can we catch up with you?
Sure, I am on Instagram at Great Gutsby and Twitter at Courtney_Guth.
And you can follow me, Emily, on Instagram and Twitter at Emily_McD. And I just want to refresh Margaret. Her website is tinkerbelltalks.com. And in our show notes, we also have a link to her website as well as the Amazon link to buy her book.
Perfect. So let's take out our closing quote. I know Margaret couldn't join us to give us her own quote, but we found one from her book that we think fits perfectly.
Yeah, so I took this book. This is the last lines of her book. She closes her book with this quote, and I love it so much because she reminds us that we can make our own magic. She ends saying, "Living my pixie-dusted life, I've learned a curious thing. Only I can cast my own shadow.
I love that. She was such a positive ray of sunshine. And we needed a little pixie dust right now, and I'm so grateful that we were able to share that with her and with you. Thanks, guys.
Thank you for listening.
Club has no affiliation with the Walt Disney Company. The views and opinions expressed by hosts and participants are theirs and theirs alone. They do not represent the organizations or companies they happen to work for.